We're gonna make the legendary Shure SM7B microphone used by every podcast known to man. We're gonna make this thing in Blender from scratch. Now, I'm gonna move quickly because I'm trying to speedrun this thing today. If you want to ask me a question, you can ask me a question down below or on my Discord server. And if you need some more explanation for the tools and techniques which you're gonna see in this video, I explained everything in my Blender Masterclass course, so you can check that out. There's a link in the description. Now let's quit wasting time. Let's start the video. Okay, step one, we hit Google, we type in Shure SM7B, we need a side view picture. Let's go with this one right here, it's pretty good. We're going to open that in a new tab, right click, save image as, save that somewhere to your computer. You might want to make a new folder just for this project, so there it is. Then we're going to go to Blender, delete everything. You're going to go front view, Shift A, go down to image reference, find your microphone folder. We got the side view picture right here, so load that into your scene. Throw that backwards. I like to reduce the opacity a little bit so it doesn't hurt my fucking eyes. And let's click on the middle right here. We're going to start with a cylinder. So Shift A, mesh cylinder. Let's set the number of vertices to something like 128. I don't want to use a subdivision surface modifier today, so I'm just going to use a bunch of vertices on my geometry. The reason I don't want to use subdivision surface is because I don't want to worry about topology, because we're trying to speedrun this. So maybe I'll even change this to 256 just to make it nice and smooth. And we're going to rotate this and scale it up on the Z-axis. When you rotate it in object mode so you can scale it on this local axis by double pressing on the axis. I don't know why this didn't occur to me before, but we can just flip this shit sideways so it's a little bit easier to model. Anyway, scale up the base a little bit, lift this thing up a little bit more and scale that up as well. This part down here is supposed to be a little bit wider than the top. I can't make it exact because my reference image is pretty shitty. Then duplicate this edge ring at the end. You're going to scale that up, and with P we're going to separate it by selection. Now extrude it down to make this little ring here. Add a loop cut in the middle, Control B to bevel that, to turn that into two edge segments. Then in edge select mode, select those two edge segments and bevel them with Control B just a little bit. That's going to allow you to take this middle face segment and scale it down with Shift Z. And then at the end with Control B, we're going to bevel this a little bit to make a round bevel. So I want the bevel to look something like this. After that, we're going to duplicate one of the segments over here from the bottom. We're going to lower that down a bit, then extrude it down again. That's going to be this black shiny ring around the microphone. And once we got that, we're going to duplicate this circle, scale it down just a little bit, separate that by selection. We're going to use that to make the microphone cover. It's not a cover, it's a pop filter or whatever. And we're also going to take this circle that we had here before. We're going to inset that and extrude it upwards a little bit. Delete the face on the inside. That's just going to allow us to create this little gap here so that when we extrude this microphone down, we can take this edge segment here and bevel it, and that's going to make it a little bit nicer, but we'll get to that later. Now extrude the mic down, and you're going to scale it down to around this big at the bottom. By the way, check this out. Once you got an angle, you can slide it up with double G, or you can slide it the other way with double G and then Alt to continue pushing it. And then once we get to the bottom, we're going to do Control B to bevel this. I think maybe I want to bevel it once with just one segment. Then I'll bevel this part a little bit more, and I'll bevel the top one more time with a bigger bevel. I don't know if this even makes any difference. I could have just beveled the whole thing together, but I think it slightly modifies the shape. It gets me a little bit closer to where I want to be. Now just to make the end a little bit nicer, we're going to inset it, lift it upwards a little bit to push it inwards, then bevel that inner area, and also bevel this part over here at the top. Now when you use smooth shading on this object, you're going to notice something weird happens over here at the top. That's because we got smooth shading up here because of this face. We can't see this face, so you're better off just deleting it altogether. And now up here, back to what I was saying earlier, we're going to push this a little bit inwards. Let's take this ring here, we're going to separate it by selection. Notice how we need some smooth shading, but if we go object shade auto smooth, the side is nice and smooth, but the edges are sharp as fuck. We need to make them a little bit softer. So we're going to take these edge loops around here, and with Control B, we're going to make a tiny little bevel here. You want that bevel to have two segments and a shape value of 1, and that way when you go object shade smooth, the edges are smooth, but the smooth shading is contained within those bevels. So that's pretty good. You're going to want to do the same thing on a couple of other places where you got some sharp edges, because there are no perfectly sharp edges in real life. I don't know, maybe there are. I've seen scientists cutting shit with lasers, putting it together like puzzles. You can't see any bevels, but whatever. This is just a fucking microphone. We're trying to make it look cute, and when you add little bevels like this, it's gonna make it look a lot more cute. It's gonna make it look more detailed and more realistic. Okay, now we got the basic shape. Let's take care of this thing on the side, which attaches the microphone to the arm. So first we're gonna place the 3D cursor onto the origin point of this cylinder up here, and Shift A, we're going to add a plane. We're gonna align that plane with our view. Now you're gonna pull that plane outwards so it's outside of the microphone. We're gonna lower it to around here somewhere. If we want to make it exact, we probably want to snap it over to this face segment. Then let's just scale it down a little bit. We're going to take this edge from the side, extrude that edge outwards to around here, then extrude it out a little bit further to around here. And once we extrude it for a second time, we're going to push it inwards a little bit on the y-axis like this. Now I can't really see in this reference image what this thing is supposed to look like, so let's go back to Google. Alright, we're back on Google. We want to get some more pictures of the microphone from a bunch of different angles. If you got a second monitor, then you just throw Google onto the second monitor so you can look at it. If you don't got a second monitor, then you go to Google, you type in PureRef, you click on download right here, you scroll down to the bottom, you click on custom amount and you set that shit to 0, and then you download PureRef right here. That's just going to give you this little canvas where you can copy paste images from Google so you can look at them as you work. I'm not going to bother with that because I got not 2 but 3 monitors in front of me, so I'm too cool for PureRef. I'm just going to throw my Google on my second monitor. Now here's roughly what I see from Google. It's supposed to be something like this. We push it up until here somewhere. Let's place the 3D cursor at the origin point, which is the exact middle of the microphone. No, it isn't. We fucked something up. We should probably make that the middle of the microphone. So let's just parent everything up to this cylinder at the top with Control P, object keep transform. Then we go cursor to origin, then selection to cursor. And now we can take this piece, Shift D, right click. We're going to set the pivot point to 3D cursor and scale this to -1 on the y-axis so we mirror it over to the other side. Then we can just fill this. We're going to take the vertices over here from both ends. We want to make those round. So Control B to bevel, V to bevel individual vertices. Now make sure your bevels meet halfway. You don't want them to pass through each other. If you have to press C to activate clamping, confirm this, set the profile shape to 0.5, turn up the number of segments to something like, let's say 32. Select everything and merge vertices by distance. My shortcut for that is Shift W. And we're also going to take these edges from over here and we're going to bevel them as well. Now let's see what's happening back there. That's because my normals are fucked up, so I got to select everything, Shift N to recalculate the normals, and now it's going to work fine. So if I bevel this with Control B, it works well. Now I kind of changed my mind. I'm not sure if I want to bevel this yet, because if I do, it's going to be hard to undo this. So I think I'll just go to my modifier tab, add modifier, generate, click on bevel. We're going to set the number of segments here to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, let's say. Increase the amount a little bit so it looks something like this. Mine is 1.4 meters or 0.14 meters. And once we got that, we're going to collapse this. We're going to add a second modifier, generate, click on solidify down here, and we're going to set the thickness here to -0.0789, something in that ballpark. And now at any time you can adjust the thickness of the metal or the width of the bevels as well by just opening this up. And there we go. Now let's go back here to the side where we beveled these corners. Now we got to make this little adjustment knob over here. So here's how you make those. First, you want to try and estimate how many of these ridges you have. So for example, you can try separating this into 1/4 and then counting how many ridges you got on 1/4. I got approximately 20 ridges on 1/4, which means 80 ridges on the entire thing. So let's select all of these. We're going to hide them with H, place the 3D cursor onto the world origin and go to top view. Now let's just talk about this for a couple more seconds, because there's 2 ways to do this. There's the easy way and there's my way, the right way. This shit's not easy, but you're going to learn something that's going to be the right way to do it. So you want to decide on how many edges you want to have per ridge. If you look closely, you're going to see that each of these little triangles is kind of cut off at the top. So that's one thing you want to keep in mind. And then you also want to remember that there's going to be a little edge in between each of the ridges. So imagine at the bottom of each of these triangles, there's a little line connecting them. So that means you're going to have 4 edges per ridge. You got the bottom line, then it goes up, then you got the top line, then it goes back down. That's 1 ridge, and then you got that shit times 80. Now the problem is that those edges are not equally long. So instead we're going to use 6 edges per ridge. Here's how this is going to work. First, add a circle. That circle has to have 80 times 6 vertices. So that's 480. And let me just draw this up for you real quick. If I extrude this and scale it inwards, the cross section is going to look like this. You're going to have the top of one of the ridges, and it's going to go down like this. That's 2 more edges. Then you have a gap between the edges, then 2 up again, then 1 more, then 2 down, and then the bottom again. So now if we apply this cut, you're going to see that 1 ridge starts here, it goes up 2 edges, 3 edges, 4, 5, 6 edges, and then you just repeat that shit 80 times. So let's undo this cut, and we want to rotate this so we don't have a vertex in the middle of the circle, but so we have an edge. And to find that number, we have to rotate this a little bit. Then we're going to set the angle of the rotation here to 360, which is a full circle, divided by 480, which is the number of vertices, then divided by 2, hit enter. That's 0.375. Now we got an edge in the middle, so now we can make our cut. So first, let's add another loop cut here. This is going to be the difference between the top and the bottom of the ridges, so we can join these 2 vertices here with J. Then we join the opposite 2, and we mark seams outside of this one section with Control E, mark seam, delete everything outside of that. Then select the edges which define the ridge. Control I, invert the selection, edge select mode, delete all the other edges. Now with the 3D cursor at the origin point of the original circle, select everything, Alt E, spin, use duplicates, number of steps 80. That should complete your full circle. So now we got a circle with 80 segments. Now we're going to use this shape here as a cookie cutter to cut a shape out of a cone, because if you look over here, the edges of this little thing are beveled, and the right way to make a bevel on a shape like this is what I'm about to show you. I know this shit takes a little time, guys, but if you want to do this right, if you want to have an impressive level of detail, this is the type of shit you gotta go through. Trust me, I'm not too happy about it either. I'd rather be out there slinging dope for money. That's way easier than this shit, but I also don't want to do no time, so we're gonna stick to this shit. Anyway, we got a little cookie cutter here. Make sure this is in the middle, then Shift A, add a cone, and that cone has to have the same number of edges which we had initially, so 480. Scale that cone down a little bit, place the origin point at the tip of the cone, scale the cone up a little bit. Now select the cone, go to edit mode on the cone, then using your outliner you're gonna shift select the circle. So the cone is in edit mode, the circle is in object mode. The circle is selected while the cone is the active object. Then you're gonna go to top view and you're gonna go up here to mesh. In the mesh menu you're gonna find knife project. This is gonna use your circle as a cookie cutter. So now you can just invert your selection with Control I. That's gonna delete everything on the outside of this thing. We don't need a cookie cutter, but we might need it again in case we fuck something up. So we're just gonna hide it with H. In edit mode we're gonna take the top vertex right here. We're gonna bevel that with Control B. We only want one segment, so it's supposed to look something like this. The reason we have the origin point up here is so that we can always snap the 3D cursor to the origin point, and that allows us to use our 3D cursor as a pivot point in case we want to adjust something on these objects down here. I just realized that we did fuck up because we forgot to rotate the cone, so let's undo a couple of steps. We're gonna rotate this again by 0.375, and then we do the same thing one more time. So select the cone, go to edit mode, shift select the circle, mesh, knife project, invert selection, delete everything, hide the cookie cutter, take the tip, bevel that with Control B and V, and there we go. There's our adjustment knob. So now we just have to extrude this down and scale it to -1, and then to make the rest of the shape we extrude this up slightly, then we extrude it again, scale it inwards, lift it up a little bit, extrude it up, scale that part down. We're gonna bevel this inner part, fill the top, bevel the top. I don't know if it's worth beveling this right now because we can just use our bevel node in the material settings later on. These bevels here are going to be really tiny. They're going to give us a real pain in the ass, going to give us a million vertices, so let's not bother with any of that right now. I do want to make a little dome up here though, so I'm going to inset this, lift it up, Control B to bevel it. Once it gets all the way to the end, now I got a little bit of a dome up there. That's just going to look a little bit cooler once I render everything, because now it looks a little bit round, so the reflections are going to behave a little bit better. Now we got this thing finished. We can flip it sideways with Alt H. We're going to unhide everything else. We're going to snap that to down here. By the way, I just noticed an important detail on this little bar behind the adjustment knob, but let's not deal with that now. We can get to that later. Up here at the top, we're going to place our 3D cursor on this surface. Shift A, we're going to add a circle, and this circle here can have, let's say, 128 vertices. You're going to extrude that upwards in this direction. Then at some point, we're going to have to add a loop cut like this. Also add another loop cut, and this is what we're going to use to extrude this little piece, which is going to connect to this one. So we have to find the exact bottom of this cylinder. To do that, we can just duplicate this, scale it to 0, and then extrude it downwards. Now we know that this here is the middle, so we can mark some seams down there. Let's select a total of 6 faces here, maybe 8 faces, extrude that outwards, and then we can just duplicate this cylinder from the top. We're not going to fuse these together right now. I'm just going to make a clip through. Over here I'm going to fill, I'm going to inset, I'm going to push this part outwards a little bit, bevel this section at the top, and then bevel this area over here. And then this piece over here is what we use to connect this to the arm. So this is where we're going to stop our work for now. Now at the top of this thing we have to add another adjustment knob, but before we do that we first have to bevel this, then bevel these 2 edge segments on that bevel, inset this, extrude it inwards. We need to have some sort of a little ring up here, so let's just use a little circle for that. Inset that circle, delete this inner area, extrude this outwards. I don't know what I'm doing. I think we're just supposed to have some sort of a little cylinder on the inside, so let's just make a little cylinder and forget about it. Then at the top we're going to have to make another one of these adjustment knobs. I'm going to use the same method I just used a couple minutes ago. I'm going to do this off camera so you guys don't have to see all that again. In the meantime, let me hit you with a little commercial. I'm going to make this quick because we don't got all day, but if you want to learn to create a professional, full fucking industry standard advertisement type of animation in Blender from scratch, like what you can see right now, I made a full course, modeling, texturing, animating, lighting, music, everything. You can check it out. There's a link in the description. Now let's get back to the fucking video. Okay, now check this out. We're going to have a wire connecting from back here to down here. So let's do that next. First, we're going to click here. This is where the wire is going to start. With Shift A, I'm going to add a little circle with, let's say, 64 vertices. I'm going to align that circle with my view. Now fill that circle with F. Turn on this magnet shit up here. Open up this little menu. Click on Face Project. Click on Align Rotation to Target. And now anywhere you place it, it's going to align with the surface below. So you want to place it around here somewhere. Scale it down to around this big. Then go to Add Modifier modifier, deform, you're going to add a shrink wrap modifier, wrap method, project, target the surface below. Then apply that modifier, extrude this out, but make sure you turn off the magnet thing and take it back to incremental. Inset with eye, extrude this thing back inwards. Make sure you bevel the edges because you want these to be nice and soft. And then to make the cable in object mode, you're going to add a new little cube in the middle of this. Then in edit mode, X collapse edges and faces. With control 2, add a subdivision surface modifier. And then in edit mode, you're just going to extrude this out. So once you start extruding that out, it's going to start giving you a little cable. You want to bring that around the microphone and attach it to this side piece over here. And on the side piece where you're going to attach it, you're going to add another little circle. We're not going to do the same crazy shit as we did before, but we are going to make that little circle part of this object down here. So it's going to be part of the same mesh. Add a circle with 64 or maybe 128 vertices. It's up to you. If you want to do real close-ups, then you want to do 128 vertices, but otherwise it doesn't really matter. So you scale this down, you extrude it inwards a little bit. You take the little surface here, you extrude that backwards. Then once the shape of your cable is ready, you're going to apply the subdivision surface modifier. And by the way, you might want to duplicate this before you apply the subdivision surface modifier and hide it. That way you can bring back this simple shape so you can adjust its shape later on if you want to. So once you apply this, it becomes much harder to adjust the shape. By the way, I want to add some more subdivision surface to make it nice and smooth. Go up here to object, convert to curve settings. We're going to open up geometry, increase the depth just a little bit. There we go. That's the cable ready to go. Now let's go back to this piece over here and let's rework that a little bit because we have to fix up the detail at the end. So we have to cut off these rounded corners that we made here initially. And instead, we're going to add a loop cut here. We're going to take these two vertices. We're going to push them outwards like this. Then let's get rid of these modifiers over here. We're going to keep them, but we're just going to make them invisible. Select these faces, X dissolve faces. Same thing on the other side. Then get rid of this edge segment. And now we can take these vertices over here on both sides and we can bevel those with Control B and V. That's going to give us this round ending over here, which looks something like this. And that's exactly the shape that we're going for here. Now, I don't know if it's exactly right, but it's more or less right. Then we add back the bevel modifier. We bring back the solidify modifier. We duplicate this object. We hide it as a backup. Apply the bevel modifier. Apply the solidify modifier. And we have to take these edge segments over here from the top, but not over here from the front. So select everything around the edges here on both the top and the bottom. And then we bevel those with Control B, and this is the shape that we're going for here. Now, one more very important thing we have to do here is join these two vertices from the sides of the bevel. Do that on every single one of them, so you're gonna have to do this 4 times. Now I have this little extra edge beneath my bevel, so that's this little edge right here. I have that on all corners. I'm gonna add an extra loop cut, which I'm gonna bring near the top. I'm gonna align that with this little edge here using my 3D cursor, and I'm gonna join the vertices from those two together with J. The reason I'm doing that is because this contains my smooth shading, so if I don't have these edge segments, the smooth shading is going to look a little bit different. It's going to pretend as if this surface over here is bent, which it isn't. It's kind of hard to explain this properly while we're trying to speedrun this, but I got other videos where I explain this a bit more thoroughly. So once this is ready, we're also going to have to make a cut into which we can fit that little adjustment knob. So I'm going to use my knife tool with K, click right here, cut along the X-axis, press T to cut through. The knife cut doesn't work too well. It gives me some glitches, so here's what I'm going to do instead. Add a loop cut here, push it out, add another one down here, push it down. Same thing over here on the other side. And then if I take these 3 faces on both sides, I can just push those inwards, and here we go. Now we bring back our adjustment knob, and if you look closely over here at the reference image, we also got some kind of rings in between the adjustment knob and the microphone. They're just fucking cylinders. I don't want to do that right now to waste your time on camera. Those are the little details which I add later on off camera. I think everybody knows how to add a cylinder and fit it in there. I don't think I have to show you that on video. Then down here at the bottom of this little stand thing, we got some kind of a screw which attaches this thing to the metal rod down here. Someone did make a Bolt Factory add-on which can make screws for you. You can just download that in a couple of clicks and drag and drop it into Blender. But I don't know how to use that to make the kind of screw that I want, so I'm just going to make mine manually. I'm going to make mine using a UV sphere, so I'm going to add a UV sphere. Number of segments is going to be 60. Number of rings is going to be 30. Then from top view, I'm going to add a new hexagon, which I'm going to lift up a little bit, scale it down to around this size. This is going to be the size of my hole. And then I'll use my knife tool to cut into this UV sphere. Once I got my cut, I'm going to take that cut and push it inwards, delete the bottom half of this sphere, scale everything down to the Z-axis, extrude this down a little, and there we go. There's my little nut. So now I just got to attach that nut to my microphone. So I'll snap the microphone to the middle. I'll stand it upright, so I'll rotate it by 90 degrees. Place my cursor down here where the nut's supposed to be. Snap the nut right there. And we also need to have some sort of a cut down here. So I'm going to take two faces, inset them with I, scale them down on the x-axis, W loop tools, bridge edge loops to connect these two holes. If you don't have your loop tools, you have to go to edit preferences, add-ons. You got to get your loop tools. And now we're all done with the basic shape of the microphone. So the hardest part is over. Let me just throw a couple of time lapses at you just so I can show you some of the other details on this microphone before we finish up. Okay, so the back of this microphone looks like this. I found this image on Google Images. I go right click, copy that image, and I throw it into an AI image generator. Google AI Studio fucked it up because he couldn't give me the result that I want. But if you go to ChatGPT and you paste this image in there and you tell him generate an image texture of the markings on the back of this microphone, he's gonna give you a pretty damn good image. So all you have to do is download that image, invert the colors, and then you can use it in Blender. So now I just have to model the back side of the microphone. This is pretty simple stuff. Then I have to make the little plate which is gonna have the texture on it. So I have to cut the holes in for the screws. I have to cut the holes in for the buttons. I have to make the little buttons. All that is pretty basic modeling. It just takes a little bit of time if you want it to look right. Then once we have the model ready, then we can unwrap this by aligning our view with the surface, selecting the surface in the front, you unwrap, project from view, and there we go. Now we got the back side taken care of. That looks pretty nice. Okay, now let me just spend a couple minutes talking to you about the materials and textures that I used here. It's pretty simple stuff. So first of all, over here, the main material which I used on my body. Let's talk about that. Here's what the material nodes look like. It's pretty simple stuff. I just got a base color which is dark gray, almost black. Metallic is turned all the way up. Then I have a noise texture node running into a bump node here. And I combine that with a bevel node, although it's probably better if I just put this bevel node into my bump node and plug it in like this. It's just going to work a little bit better in combining the bevel node with the bump node. So the bump node gives me this bumpy surface which makes it look kind of like metal, so it's not perfectly clean and smooth. And the bevel node makes it look like I have little bevels over here on the edges. And I'm still going to adjust this later on when I start rendering everything, so you can see that this looks a little bit too rough right now. So for example, I'll just reduce down the strength on this bump node a little bit and see what happens. But in general, you can just copy this node setup if you want to. It's going to turn out pretty well for the final render. I got something similar going on down here on these screws which are in the back of the microphone. So I also have a noise texture node creating a bump map, except the noise texture node is a little bit bigger, so it's a little bit less detailed. Then over here around the middle of the microphone, I made this band, and it looks like I accidentally fucked up the projection, so I'm gonna have to unwrap this again and UV map it. But this is a texture down here which I made in Canva, and I'm gonna show you that in a second. Just give me a few seconds to adjust this again. So we have to change up the position of the UV map, and then it says Shure up here, maybe rotate it by 180 degrees, depends on what looks better. So you can see these little icons that you have here. You have these little bits of text and whatnot. I made those in this simple Canva canvas, so I had a black background. I got a Shure logo from Google. I typed in SM7B, then I got this thing. I just typed in CE letters and I copy pasted that. Then I put together this little shape right here. I don't know what that means. And some more text, so I export that by downloading it from Canva. And I just add a simple material which I apply here. I unwrap this surface and I place it over the image. And there we go. Now I have that little label. Over here on the inside, I have this little golden thing, and then I have this chrome ring. I don't know why that's colored the way it is, but it looks pretty nice. This is the same material as the body, so everything is the same down here. Now let me show you something a little bit more interesting which you can hardly see right now, but it's gonna make a pretty big difference once I do my close-up shots. When I select this surface right here, you can see I got some little spots and dots all over the object. That's because I added a particle system that distributes these little particles all over the surface, and that makes it look like there's dust, because in real life there's gonna be dust on this object. So for example, if you take a look at this image right here, you can see it's got a bunch of tiny little spots all over the place, just little dust specks that make it look more realistic. And here's how I made that. I made this little cube which I subdivided once, and then the same shape over here which is just stretched out a little bit. I select this object and I go to my particle settings. I added two new particle systems, one for the ball, the other one for this long thing. You set that to hair, and then you play around with some of the settings. I'm showing you mine right now. If you want to try and recreate this, just try to copy everything that I have down here. I don't want to spend too much time explaining how this stuff works right now, but if you guys want, I can make another video to explain this in more detail. So just let me know in the comments and I can do that. And then for my lighting, I just got these simple lights placed around the object, so I'm going to see if I can come up with some cool animations for this. Alright guys, so that's all I got for you in this video. I hope you learned something. If you think I missed something important, then let me know down in the comments. Also tell me what you want me to see next, either in the comments or on Discord, or you can send me a message on Instagram. I might not reply, but I definitely will see your message. Don't forget to check out the courses in the description if you want to learn more, or if you just want to support the channel. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, let me know what you want to see next, and I'll see you guys in the next one.